Okay, so I'm going to make a series of videos starting with this one. It's got to do with the 1901 Commonwealth of Australia Constitution. So this is one of the biggest sticking points that I've noticed, that especially when you find out that what you thought was government was actually not. It's a corporation and all its entities and versions thereof, including the executive, which is the police and the prisons, also the courts. How they're meant to be public servants, but they're not. They're private corporate entities working for foreign interests, and so they're foreign occupying forces masquerading as public servants. When you find all that out, it's very distressing, and you don't know what to do. And I had the same experience. And then you find out, wow, Australia has a constitution. So then, obviously, you're just naturally going to gravitate and want to get all your attention and stuff into seeing that's how it's protecting you. Here's the tragic news, guys. That in itself isn't what you think it is. And so what this video is, and the next series I'm going to do, is to show you how that's a fact. Whether you're open or willing to see that, that's an entirely different thing. Obviously, I can't control that. Now, when I did all the stuff on BOSI, same thing, got a bunch of people who couldn't handle it. They never challenged on the actual content. All they did is just came in with slander and libel. Just full... just wanted protecting their biases, which is what most people do. They attach to something. The longer they attach to it, the deeper ingrained that is. And anyone who shows them anything different, they just want to harm them. And so this is most likely going to be something that's going to come out of this too. I'm guessing is everyone who's attached to the 901, because you put your time, energy, and labour into it. It's really difficult for the ego to separate from that and have someone else show you something different. So if that's you, you're going to know, because straight away you're going to start resisting as soon as I start showing you things that do not appeal to your, the way you've come to attach and what you've accepted as a truth. And so you're going to know straight away. You're going to feel that resistance. And if that's you, there's no value in you watching this any further, because you're going to come up with reasons in your mind. You're going to create stories to debunk it all, right? So if you're not coming to this with an open mind of thinking, well, there's probably something here that's worth me finding out that would probably serve me. If you're not coming with that open mind, there's no value for you here. So if I can get what I need to happen and move on, we can go to the next slide. So Alexander Solzhenitsyn, love this quote: "The simple step of a courageous individual is to not take part in the lie." So there's some people who go through life, loving the idea that they can be wrong, because that's how they grow and learn. And so they're never fixed. They've always got something new. And so they're evolving, right? So that's basically what this is saying. So this is going to determine where you're at. If this is you, you're going to be interested. If it's not, you're going to dismiss it, and then you're going to come up with all these attacks. And it's always a character assassination. It's never on the content. So what is a lie? A lie is any deviation away from the constant line of truth. All right, so what I'm about to show you now is going to, on the surface, sound all legit, and I can totally see it, because I too would have fallen for this when I first started down the path. So there's a lot of, just so you know, guys, I had a lot of rabbit holes that I went down that most of you are telling me about. The whole birth certificate stuff, the stuff happened in 1973, 1986, with the Whitlam and Hawke, and what you're going to see, he covers that, and thinking that's the beginning of it all. That's the sad part. That's only a symptom, and we're going to get into that too. So here we go. Here comes Tim.
See what we get. There it is. Look at that. The authority within Australia. Where is the authority? Who has the authority? And then you go, oh, Tim, look, you've been banging on about this. You watch. You watch. This one is a corker. All right. The real constitution is within this book, the red one. It is within that one, and it is explained in that book. The green book, as with a big cross across it, this is the fraudulent constitution of the corporation of the Australian Parliament. The red book is the constitution of the Australian people as gazetted in 1901.
So before we go on, just want to throw this one out here for, just for consideration. If you were going to run a PSYOP, right, a really sophisticated one, would you just leave it to chance, or would you want to seal off all the exits? And how do you do that? Well, would you not deliberately create something that's supposed to be misinformation, so then those who discover it go, aha, found you? Like, would that not be something you'd consider maybe that's worthwhile? If you really understand how human minds work and how to manipulate them, wouldn't you start going down that path? Just something to consider. So what he's showing you was that, green one being the bad one, which means, well, if that's the bad one, because we all think, most people think in polarities, well, then this one must be the good one, right? There's nothing in between. And so, because people who run the show, they know how people are easy to trap. And so it's either one or the other. That's it. You get two choices. It's night or day. There's nothing in between. And so just wanted to throw that out there, is if you were going to run a really sophisticated PSYOP, would that not be something you'd put in? Just a question.
Authority in Australia. Section 42 of the Constitution of the Australian Commonwealth, 1901, states, every senator and every member of the House of Representatives shall, before taking his seat, make and subscribe before the Governor-General or some person authorised by him an oath or affirmation of allegiance in the form set forth in the schedule of the Constitution. 38. The schedule of the Constitution contains the wording of the oath and affirmation.
All right, so that in itself, not much of a big deal, right? Doesn't really nothing too much to challenge on that. It's just got a set of instructions of how you're to take up your role and what are the specific requirements, right? Not a big deal. So not really going to talk much about that.
Now, I've shown you that before. It's very simple. It is there. Go back and look at it if you wish.
So now we're going to go to the next one, and that's when he starts talking about the 30 years of the corruption and the being happy for at least 30 years, and then he goes into the what happened in 73 and 86.
Okay, so let's get back to the right book. Everything must be under the right book, not under the green book. You've got to go under the red book, not the green book. Now, Gough Whitlam, mate, these people, him and Hawke, they are disgusting. I'm sorry, they are just pure disgusting. Whitlam removes the people from the Commonwealth of Australia Commonwealth Act under the Act's Interpretation Act of 1973. He creates his own queen called the Queen of Australia. And you would have heard it. Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen of Australia. That's Gough Whitlam. He's the signatory behind the Queen of Australia. Was Gough a queen? I don't know. Now, there is no physical body that represents the Queen of Australia. It is a piece of paper. It is a fraudulent document. It is a document of treason. Now, they take away our English common law and change it to the common law of Australia, where we have no rights. That was Bob Hawke.
So I'm just going to stop it there. So he's running on the assumption that we had rights prior to 1973, and then it only got taken away in 1973, right? So when we get into what a constitution actually is, you're going to see that that's not actually correct, that we never had any rights from the beginning, because to have rights means there must be a mechanism by which we, the people, can ensure, not from what's written on any bit of paper, but in lived practice, right? There must be that mechanism, and it's never existed. That's the real life experience of rights. It's not what's written, it's how it's done in action. Because anything that's got to do with law is never what's written on paper. It's always experienced. So rights can't be written into reality. They can only be experienced by how we function. And if we don't have that mental understanding of what that is, we cannot actually live what it is to have rights. That's a really big principle that most people don't understand. And that's why they get sucked into all this kind of stuff. But anyway, let's listen on.
They should burn Bordertown to the ground just for the fact that he lived there.
So this is the thing that, it's kind of deviating off, but just wanted to raise this flag. So just imagine that you live in your town and someone grew up in there, and they were a real disaster, and you don't like them. So does that mean that your house should be burnt down as well? Like, I know he's joking, but you just think about what kind of energy he's sending out, and it's that real destructive, like scorched earth type. Just get rid of anything that's bad, right? To really sort of hammer a point. But what does it put? What kind of energy does it put out there? What kind of mentality does it put out there? And is that what he's wanting? Is he wanting total destruction of anything he doesn't like? So there's just some things to just think about how people phrase things and what it actually incites in people, and little mental programs it's planting in there. And then, if you have this thing about being treated unjustly, and this is the way that you're having it represented to you, before you know it, you start actually joining in that hate energy and starting to want to harm others and treat people as a collective. That's the biggest danger here, because ultimately that's what's going to be the difference between your understanding of this is individualism and collectivism. And he's now just really promoted collectivism, and once you understand what's here, you'll see why he thinks that way, because that's the essence of what this is about.
They should tear his house down at least. Brings in the Australia Act of 1986 without a referendum or getting consent from the Australia people. Right? Gough Whitlam, Malcolm Fraser, Bob Hawke, Paul Keating, John Howard, Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, and everybody since is in on the game. They are selling everything out from under us. Now, impersonating a Commonwealth public official. I'm serious about this. This is where we're going.
Okay, so this is the critical part, guys. There's a lot of really solid info here, because most people are, I'm guessing, going to miss why I'm really focusing on this. So let's see if you can grab it before I explain it.
Impersonations of an official by a non-official. A person other than the Commonwealth public official commits an offence if, and I want to move down to C, if the first mentioned person does so with intent to deceive. Yes, they have. They have presented themselves as Commonwealth officials in pure deception. It's an imprisonment for 2 years per offence, mind you, and that means every day they've fronted up at work for the last 30 years. A person other than a Commonwealth public official commits an offence if the person falsely represents himself or herself to be a Commonwealth public official in a particular capacity, and the person does so in the course of doing an act or attending a place in the assumed capacity of such an official. Yes, they have. That's another 2 years per offence. Let's have a look at this.
All right, so I'm going to give you a moment to see if you've grabbed what's in front of you. If you haven't, I'm going to spell it out for you. All right, so the biggest trick that's been played on the entire population, not just here, but across the world, is the idea of government being legitimate. Now, the word govern means to control, and obviously ment means mind. So the idea that we are controlled or mind controlled, right, that's a legitimate system. That's not the original setup. That's a usurped setup. That was well in place before Australia was even a colony of the English Commonwealth. So why do people think that now, all of a sudden, you know, the English are going to create themselves a slave colony, or they're going to starve their people? They're going to make sure that they actually have to be imprisoned, right? Because they just create these legal laws, so to speak, about what's not allowed and what your punishment is. Overcrowd the jails, so then they can what? They can start shipping them off somewhere else for the purpose of what? Was it really to create a fair income society? Was it? Because if it was, it never would have been set up from that position of rape, plunder, and pillage. That you can't set up something virtuous from something that's immoral. It's not possible, because everyone's going to be so deeply traumatized. There's no way that's ever going to happen. And it still had masters, you know, had a ruling class, and that never changed. That was always the dynamic. And so a ruling class is just now just going to create this, let's call it a constitution for now, because it's not actually one. This set of rules that's going to bind those who want to rule you. Like, think about that. Now, this, you know, ruling class that set this up is going to make you believe that this is actually legit, because what? They put in penalties for themselves. Now, if you understand a system of service, which is what a public servant is, how can a public servant set their own terms and punishments? Think about that, guys. That's not someone who's in service. That's someone who's dictating. They're writing their own rules for their own punishment. So then what do? You go, oh, that sounds fair. You know, look, there's punishments for them. But do you honestly believe they actually ever intended to punish themselves? Like, when's that ever happened? So what's the next thing they did? Well, actually, they did it before they even wrote this. They already came in with parliamentary sovereignty, right? Which is what? Parliamentary privilege, which is what? Immunity from prosecution. So you've got people who are part of a ruling class, right? that are going to write punishments for themselves that they never intended to prosecute themselves, because why would they, right? By giving themselves parliamentary immunity. I mean, you know, it's right there in your face, guys. It's really easy to spot if you're looking. So that's the first part I wanted to start on. I'm coming back. There's lots more because I need to explain things like individualism and collectivism so you really understand it. But just for now, that's where I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to come back with another one.